Okay, it's time to begin. We left off with Gehazi. Well, we're leading up to Gehazi, actually. We're showing that the Bible often puts two figures together for the reader to decipher, to understand which one is the better example. And so I think this particular event in the life of Elisha and Naaman is not about Elisha. It's about the difference between the example and the attitude of Naaman and the example and the attitude of Gehazi. Those are the two characters that are put up for us as either good example or bad example. And so we've noticed several things about Naaman and his conversion to the one and true God. Many of the things that he stated in 2 Kings chapter 5, beginning about verse 15, he wanted to give gifts to Naaman. You know, they were at first probably gifts meant to purchase his healing. You know, that's the way people back then thought that they would be able, you know, because of his stature and who he was, if he paid money to the priest or whatever, he would receive a blessing. And so I don't know if you think of it as a bribe or a payment for, a blessing. But Naaman refused it. Elisha refused the gifts. And then Naaman said several things that indicate his true conversion. He indicated that he wasn't going to sacrifice to the god of Syria anymore. He wanted to give now the gifts that he brought as a present of thanksgiving, a gift of thanksgiving to the prophet. And the prophet still refused it because I think Elisha wants Naaman to know it's not him that gave him the clear skin of his leprosy, but it was God. Then Naaman wanted to take some dirt from Israel back to Syria. And you have to understand, even though he's had a conversion, he's not fully aware of all things yet. Just like a new Christian isn't. And so back during the day, the cities and the empires had their particular territorial gods. And the battles were always like against one god and another god of another city. In conquering territory, that would expand the territory of the god. So they all had their particular gods and goddesses that they worshiped. And they were territorial. They were unique to the particular city-state or the location. And so it makes sense that he would request some dirt to go and that he could put out this dirt and worship, Yahweh, the God of Israel, upon it. And the other thing about him is he asks for forgiveness because in his position, he is the, the second to the king. He is the head of the army, and the king relies on him, and he follows the king around, and they would go into the pagan temple, and the king would worship and hold his arm, and he would have to assist the king and bow down when the king did and all that. And he wanted Elisha to know that, this is a part of his job, but he's not worshiping. He wants to be forgiven for entering into that temple. And we talked a little bit about that even though Elisha said, go in peace, it's not necessarily that he was granted forgiveness. Elisha can't offer forgiveness, God does, but it's to stress the fact that people start in their conversion and they will maturate. They'll mature as they learn more about Yahweh and all this. And we hope he did. I think the Bible is very positive about Naaman and is recording these things, I think, to show the process of conversion. He's young in the faith now. And so Naaman leaves And Gehazi begins to reason in his head. You know, he brought all of these gifts, this money, the silver and gold, and these changes of clothes. So, you know, he sort of feels like he ought to get something, you know, and what's wrong with Elisha? You know, why would he refuse these gifts? It would help the sons of the prophets monetarily. It would help them with clothing and all these things. So he crafts a plan in his head to go after Naaman after he left. And he convinces Naaman to send some people with him to return to where Elisha is. But before they actually arrive, he tells these army people, these people that were with Naaman, to, you know, it's all right, I'll take it from here. So he's got some clothing and he has some various things, and he's going to use that. At least he says that he wants to give it to, you know, visitors and travelers and people that are with him. And he makes it appear as if Elisha is condoning all of this, that this is from Elisha. And so this is where we're going to pick up. Let's start in verse let's go ahead and pick up the context. Verse 19, he said to him, go in peace. Now, but when Naaman had gone from a short distance, Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, see, my master has spared this Naaman the Syrian, in not accepting from his hand what he brought. As the Lord lives, I will run after him and get something from him. Notice how he's rationalizing, or I think he's doing what a lot of people do with religion. Okay, they assume God's approval on what they want to do. They invoke God as if God says, oh, okay, since you invoke my name and everything, go ahead and do this. I'm thinking about Balaam and the donkey. You remember when Barak, wanted Balaam to come and preach against the children of Israel because, the army, the horde of people were coming up and they were afraid. And so he was offering Balaam some money, and, he inquired of God, and God said, don't go, and then God said, go. You wonder, why would God's, almost seem contradictory? Well, I think it's a test. It's like, where is he going to trust God or not? He wants to go, and so in Romans chapter 1, God gives people over to their desires. If they want to do it, go ahead. And so Balaam goes, and what meets him? The angel of the Lord is there with his sword drawn, and the donkey begins to, cower and goes against a cliff, and Naaman gets so upset he starts beating that donkey and everything, and then we have the donkey, why are you beating me? And then his eyes are open and he sees the angel of the Lord, you would surely have been killed. And so then God, after, I think, generating some fear in him, he allows him to go, but he says, do not curse the people, you bless them. Well, and he does that. Balaam does that. But on the side, Balaam is organizing, I think, events to get Israel to sin against God, which they end up doing. We're not told that on the surface. We just find that a little bit later. But it's the same kind of thing where Balaam's justifying in his mind an activity because he desires the money and what the king is offering him. I mean, who could give that up? So he's not a good example, and Balaam serves as a warning to people about, I think, rationalizing and for their greed and for using religion as a rationale in some way to achieve something that God would not approve of. Just because you invoke God's name in doing it it must be approved. Well, this is the mistake I think a lot of people make when you have the verse in the Bible says, calling on the name of the Lord, do this, calling on the name of the Lord, as if what you have desired and planned to do, if you'll call on the name of the Lord, you say, say God's name or rationalize in some way, that somehow that makes things approved by God, and it doesn't. And so here we have Gehazi, who is using religious language to justify his goal of getting, this material stuff from Naaman. So that's where we are right now. He says, Naaman saw someone running after him, and he got down from his chariot to meet him. Notice the transition in Naaman. First, and I brought it out last time, that the structural element of this in regard to Naaman and Elisha has to do with the word stood. Naaman first stood, and he was in his chariot before the door of Elisha, and Elisha never came out. That was an insult. Later, it said that Naaman, after his healing, came and stood at the door, and Elisha came out. Okay? Which is interesting. Now, you see the humility of Naaman because of the healing. He's very humbled and grateful now to the God of Israel and to Elisha the prophet. Now, we're going to have another stand here in regard to Gehazi, who's going to be standing before the prophet, okay, after he gets all the things. So, and Naaman said, please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothing. And Naaman said, be pleased to accept 2 talents. And he urged him and tied up 2 talents of silver in 2 bags with 2 changes of clothing and laid them on 2 of his servants, and they carried them before Gehazi. So the servants, are carrying the gifts back to Elisha. And when he came to the hill, he took them from their hand and he put them in his house. And he sent them away, and they departed. He went in and he did what? He stood before his master. Okay? So 3 accounts of someone standing, which I think is forming the structure again. But this time, we've seen what I would say the humiliation, or how Naaman was humbled. Now we're seeing the pride of Gehazi. Okay? And he's standing before his master, and without anything being said, notice what Elisha says. And this is what's interesting. Gehazi has been the servant of Elisha for a long period of time. But he still thinks, maybe he thinks, Elisha's old, he won't know or whatever, but Elisha is a prophet, and he's a man of God. And God reveals things to him. And so we have, and he went in, and he stood before his master, and Elisha said, where have you been, Gehazi? This is the same kind of question that God asked in the garden. Where are you? You remember, to Adam and Eve? And what were they doing? They were hiding because they knew they had sinned. And here's a question that's meant for Gehazi to do some reflection here. Okay? He says, so where have you been? And he said, your servant went nowhere. But he said to him, did not my heart go when the man turned from his chariot to meet you? Was it a time to accept money and garments, olive orchards and vineyards, sheep and oxen, male servants and female servants? In other words, is this a time to accept gifts of any kind? Therefore, the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and to your descendants forever. So he went out from his presence, a leper like snow. So you see the 2 examples here. the example of Naaman, top of his game, was humble and converted. Gehazi, who should know better, right? He's the servant of the prophet. And yet, he is the one filled with greed. Yes? Well, I don't know if I have the answers, but Jonathan will.
I mean, this leprosy guy evidently wasn't bad enough that he couldn't stay with Elijah or anybody else, because he continues to be with Elijah. Even to the point after he dies, he goes before the king and bids for the lady from Zarephath to get her land back. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he was able to go before people, and it looked like Naaman was able to do the same thing before that happened. So what do you think, what kind of leprosy did he have?
I have no idea. You know, the leprosy is, it's a broad term in Hebrew. It can describe all kinds of skin diseases. But
and he was a pretty good dude.
Yeah.
I mean, he stayed with Elijah.
Yeah.
And he bids with a woman. I mean, so.
Well.
And it's like us. We sin all the time.
That's true. But he had the consequence of the sin always before him to remind him of what he had done.
Just like David.
Yeah. But notice the two examples. So if you're reading this, who comes out the hero? Naaman does, doesn't he? He comes out being the good example, which at first, you know, this guy who's so pompous and gets angry and all this, you see the transformation of him. But then you see Gehazi, who should know better. Why is it always people that should know better to get in trouble?
Right on with that. We get a glimpse of, to me, we get a glimpse of the new covenant. And
Yeah.
if you go to Luke, I think it's chapter 4, Jesus refers to Naaman, and he's talking to people that should know better.
Yeah.
He's talking to the Pharisees.
Was it not Naaman, and was it not the woman of Zarephath or whatever?
They didn't like that either.
Yeah, It's always the outsider, it seems, that, and I don't know why this is true, and this is a warning to us as members of the Lord's church, because there's never a point in time where we should develop an attitude because we're in the church that somehow we're superior to others. And it's easy for members of the church to enter into a judgmentalism of others, you know. I don't know why that is. But it's, you know, the children of Israel were plagued with that disease, that spiritual disease. And so Gehazi is not the example here. Now, if we did a study on Gehazi, his thing, but we're dealing with this event right here, which I think is showing us two examples. Let's be a Naaman. Who would ever say that?
Man.
You know, be a Naaman. Now I know he has his weaknesses. You know, I thought and all this, but boy, what a it's almost like the Apostle Paul. You know, what a transformation. Yes.
I have a fixation with mules.
A fixation with mules.
I was raised with them, plowed and rode them.
All right.
And when it mentions here that Naaman thought so much and was so converted, it says he took 2 mule loads of dirt back with him to Syria, to where he could properly offer sacrifices to God on that dirt.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much that was, but a mule pretty strong.
Yeah, 2 of them. I'm sure there's a lot of dirt. He still has that infantile understanding of things, that God is the God of all the earth. But this was can you imagine people asking, what do you got this dirt for? I can imagine Naaman's predicament in a lot of things, but he's a convert to the God of Israel in a pagan country, and I imagine he had some impact upon people. You know, who knows?
I've got rocks still there. I mean, you think about the place you're at. I know it's special, but that's a wonderful place. So I just put a rock in my pocket, and they let it go through the customs. So that's fine.
Okay. Do you have it with you now?
Not with you now. But I mean,
I got a rock from the Sea of Galilee.
That's what I'm saying. It's a special place.
So I think from Naaman's point of view, it was how a pagan would understand, or at least his infantile understanding of things, of the God of Israel. But there's quite a transformation that happens with Naaman, and then you have Gehazi, who's, I don't know, he's overwhelmed with his greed and wanting something, and he lies, he crafts a plan, and he suffers the consequences. I mentioned Acts chapter 5 is about who? What two Christian people that suffered a demise? Ananias and Sapphira. Someone says, well, the Old Testament is about, judgment and law. New Testament is about grace. Well, Ananias and Sapphira's, what happened to them, it sounds like Old Testament stuff, doesn't it? But it just shows you that good, I think, religious people can get caught up into something where they desire the approval of men, or they're led by greed, various things that get them into trouble.
Well, both of the people that Jesus mentioned when he went back to his hometown for Gentiles, he pointed out, said there was no other miracle done but those two. Yeah. Well, to me, that's interesting in a lot of different ways. So is it all about your heart? Because both those people had the right heart. Well, after Naaman, after he was converted, had the right. They didn't have to do anything else. They didn't worship in the temple. They go to the temple 3 times a year, whatever.
We don't know what they did. We don't know what came of Naaman.
Of course, this story is filled with different individuals that teach us a valuable lesson. The little captive girl.
Yeah.
Being captive and taken back to a foreign country, she could have been devastated. She could have blamed God, she could blame, but yet God put her in a place for this very purpose. Yeah. God knew what would happen. He knew her attitude, knew her personality, and I just bet she got a raise when Naaman got back.
And who's to say that there weren't others who had been captured that were in Syria, where Naaman could have learned more, and who knows what would follow after that.
Well, for her, like Jimmy said, for her to be so faithful, because remember Elijah said, "I'm the only one."
Yeah.
So there was very few faithful Israelites there.
Yeah, true.
It's not said, but I wonder what happened to the servants that went with him, that was part of the scheme.
Yeah.
The sons of the prophets. Because they were in on it too. But were they just following directions from him to go with him, or?
Does it mention that they went with him? I don't know if this.
It said,
let me see.
My master sent me saying, he goes.
He said, let me see.
2 young men of the sons of the prophets have come to me from the hill country. And then
I think that's his lie. I don't think they were involved. I think that's a part of what he's saying to Naaman to get the. Now it may be that 2 were coming. I don't know.
Or his servants.
Yeah.
So they gave it to his servants to take with him. He urged him. And
No. I think he's saying
to 2 of his servants, and they carried them before him. So was that Naaman?
I think that's Naaman's servants. Okay. Yeah, the sons of the prophet. He referenced that as a rationale of make it I think believable. We have guests coming, and it'd be nice to be able to take care of them in some way. And you can see how that would probably be a good rationale, because Elisha ministers among sons of the prophets. There seems to be schools of sons of the prophets in various places. Marshall.
Yeah. Hey, Gehazi could have had good intentions. His question, he could have started out with good intentions and it went bad, and the further he got into it. Mm-hmm. And in my life, sometimes that happens to me. I start out doing something, I got good intentions, and sometimes it doesn't turn out that good.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you get to a point, though, you got to lie.
Yeah. Right.
And that's exactly what he was at. He may have been, you know, he was gonna give that stuff away to somebody, but, you know, on the way home.
Well, he said he was, but
On the way home, let me just put these in my closet until
Yeah.
I find out exactly what we give it to you, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, those.
I take it like Achan. You know, when Achan took of the forbidden spoil and hid it in his tent, I think he was taking it back to hide it from his master, because his master was not, you know, did not condone or give permission to do this.
But what's so scary, it could have started out as something of
Yeah.
good intentions and it turned bad.
Well, I
Maybe
think
so.
Anthony's right about the two servants. I mean, I don't know what version you read, but in the ASV version, the two servants took the stuff. It says right here,
All right.
which, I mean, I think two right.
It was Naaman's servant.
It's Naaman's servants.
All right, let's see, let me read. All right, please give them, and he said that the sons of the prophet, two young men, the sons of the prophet, please give them a talent of silver and 2 chains of clothes. And Naaman said, be pleased to accept the 2, and he urged him, and he tied up the 2 talents of silver in 2 bags and 2 chains of clothes, and laid them on the 2 of his servants. Now, is it his servants or is it?
I think it's Naaman's servants what he's talking about,
Okay.
not the sons of the prophet.
Well, evidently they were there, though.
No, I think that's what he's contriving. That's his excuse for getting it, because I have servants, you know, sons of the prophets and my servants. I want to give this to them. I don't think they were there. He was getting them for them. That's how I understand it. But you know, I could be wrong, but I doubt it. No, I'm just playing.
We vote on it?
So, what would be the main lesson of this, though? Whether it's his servants or not, what's the main lesson, Terry?
Main lesson?
The main lesson.
Well, main lesson, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And love
Okay.
neighbor yourself. That's the main lesson.
Okay.
And don't steal rocks.
Don't steal rocks.
They let me have it.
All right.
Big sign up there, do not take rocks. Yeah.
And it's okay to lie on certain occasions.
Don't exploit a situation
I mean,
for
look
your
at
own.
Rahab. I don't know what you're talking about. I ain't seen those spies.
Well, you know, that's a subject for another time, but I think one of the main lessons would be exploiting a situation to your advantage. To me, seems one of the problematic things that Gehazi is involved in, because he says, my servant, you know, I mean, my master refused the gifts of this Syrian. It's almost as if he's saying he made a mistake. Elisha should have received these things. Think of what we could do. And that might be good intentions. Yeah, we could have used that. But it wasn't his place to go and try to secure it. Yeah.
Elisha didn't send him, he went on his own.
So what's the solution then to Gehazi's dilemma? What should he have done?
Just stayed at home.
Stayed at home.
Or ask if you go.
Ask if he could go, or ask if he could, you know, get a little bit for whatever. But that's all of those things seem to indicate, since they're not in the text, I almost think that Gehazi's got this manipulation going on in his head and trying to get what Elisha refused.
Well, like I said, it must have been a good guy, because Elijah didn't throw him out.
Well, I
He
mean-
kept him with him the rest of his life.
He gave you liberty, though.
What?
He
God
gave
gave
you
him
liberty,
liberty.
though.
Yeah, God gave him liberty. Yeah, well, I mean, we suffer the consequences of our sin.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, look at David, what happened to his household.
We're not saying anything about the whole life of Gehazi. He's going to suffer the consequences. But if these two examples are given, the better example to follow in this situation, and what I think Scripture is teaching us, is we need to learn to humble ourselves. Okay? Yes, were you going to say something? I know you're thinking because you're going like this.
Selfish gain, talking about what lessons do we learn?
Yeah.
Sometimes we're put in positions of, you could say, authority, or in a position to receive gains
Yeah.
that from something or somebody, and we need to be very careful that we don't let selfish greed come
Yes.
into play and start changing our behavior for some selfish greed.
Mm-hmm.
was just too much for him to refuse, and he took advantage of that situation and then lied. See,
Yeah.
Elijah, when he asked him about it, where did you go? Oh, I didn't go.
No, I ain't going anywhere.
So he gave him a chance to say, yeah, well, you know, I was thinking about it. He'd come up with all kinds of excuses to give on that, but he just lied about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he was guilty.
Yeah.
Well, you know, they didn't like the Syrians. I mean, look at Jonah. He didn't want to go to Nineveh. I mean, and the prophet Elijah himself starts crying because he says, "Why are you crying?" He says, "Because I see what you're fixing to do to my people." I mean, they were horrible to Israel. And so he might have said, "I'm going to get this man's money because I don't like him."
Well, I think this is why you have the statement, "this Syrian."
Yeah.
I don't think
They
it
don't
was a
like it.
compliment. And, you know, hey, no, I think it was the derogatory thought in his head concerning Naaman. Okay, the next event. And I'll ask you, why is this in the text? All right. So we have chapter 6, verse 1. Now the sons of the prophet said to Elisha, "See, the place where we dwell under your charge is too small for us. Let us go to the Jordan, each of us get there a log, and let us make a place for us to dwell there." And he said, "We'll go." Then one of them said, "Be pleased to go with your servants." And he answered, "I will go." So he went with them, and when they came to the Jordan, they cut down trees. But as one was felling a log, his axe head fell into the water, and he cried out, "Alas, my master, it was borrowed." Then the man of God said, "Where did it fall?" When he showed him the place, he cut off a stick and threw it in there and made the iron float. And he said, "Take it up." So he reached out his hand and took it. That's it. Oh, let's think deep now.
What kind of stick was it?
The same one that they used when they wanted the sheep without spots, and then they wanted the sheep with spots.
That was laying at the feed trough.
Yeah.
So, well, you're still not answering the question. Nothing in the Bible is superfluous, I don't believe. I think it's there for a reason. But it may be a reason that's difficult to see at times. What do you think the key thing in this event is? I think there's something. But I want to go into y'all's deep minds here, and you tell me what this event is stressing.
Well, it's kind of like Jesus, if you ask me, when he did the first miracle and came, turned the water to wine. I mean, he was minding his own business, and his mother came over to him. And I mean, what was the purpose of that? You know, to show that God is God over all,
Yeah.
over everything.
Well, I think there was a purpose, John. I think he saved an embarrassment of a family,
Yeah.
of a host, you know. But there's reasons. Why was it so necessary? Now, how many of you got so mad at fishing you threw your fishing rod into the water?
Our golf club.
Or you got mad and you threw your golf club in the creek or whatever?
Yeah, but this was a volley
I
one.
bet there's a lot of balls in the water. When I was little, I played golf a lot when I was younger, and I would spend some time in the rough and by the water stuff, and I would come out with all kinds, you know, balls, a lot of them. Where people, they wouldn't even go look at them, you know, look for it. They just pop out another
We ain't
one.
bought a ball in 10 years.
Yeah. So I've given you time to contemplate it. So
I think it's really proving Elijah is the prophet of God. These people should see that, trust in him, try to do the right things, that they're out there trying to build their place.
okay.
I like what Elaine said just a second ago about it being borrowed.
Yes. Did you say that, Elaine?
Yes, I did.
I didn't hear that.
You were busy.
With these two?
It could be.
Well, women
no
are
matter
praying
how,
silent anyway.
no matter how lost you were, you can be restored.
How lost you were, you can be restored, even at the bottom of a pond or the river. I think the key is it was borrowed. It was borrowed. The guy was concerned that he had borrowed an axe, and now it was, you know, he lost it in the water. Now you have to understand the culture of that day, and even Jesus mentions things like this in the New Testament. What was the significance of having went and borrowed?
Well,
How did they look at it when you borrowed something?
Give back that plus something.
Yeah. Well, that and yeah.
And the axe head, the iron axe head or whatever it was, that didn't come by very
No,
easily.
no. That was a very important piece of equipment. Yes.
They're trying to cross the Jordan. They're on a mission, going to go to try to find a larger place more suitable for the sons of the prophets to dwell. So they're on this mission, and Elisha is, I think it's not only to show that the importance of that particular son of the prophet, how he wanted to not lose something he
Right.
borrowed, but to show them just how powerful and how God was involved in this mission.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a man of God. Look what he floated an axe head for us.
So what does that say in regard to our mission and mission loss? Jesus says he's with us, right? So
You're not borrowing my chainsaw.
I'm not.
Let it go in the water, things don't float back there.
Hey, I gotta tell you, Marshall borrowed my pressure washer and it broke. So he bought me a brand new.
I got amnesia on that.
Well, is it? I think I'm not sure that they were. I don't know where they were planning on building the dwelling, but I know they went to the Jordan to find trees and things of that nature. But the guy was very despondent, it seems, because he had lost that axe head, and God's involved in very personal. In the personal lives of individuals. And I think there's something there too about the respect we have for another's property. But like I said, this is a challenging event because there's several things that probably we could derive from this. The idea of the task, the mission to build a dwelling, and the prophet's with there, and the prophet helps. God's involved in our lives and in our, purposes when they're aligned with His, right? But also the individual responsibility. He felt responsible, and so I thought about this a lot. I've read lots of things, but there's no definitive answer that I've seen from any scholars or commentaries and things of this nature. It's just a unique event. And I'd have to say that it seems, because of the statement, it is borrowed, is something that the text is telling us about how to frame this event. And so my view is that the respect for the personal property and just the attitude of that particular individual, and God being a participant in the restoration of that, which is interesting. So one of the things I've highlighted in all of these events of Elijah and Elisha is all of these events that are happening, they're real personal. God's pretty, quote unquote, intimate with the lives of His people, isn't He? I mean, He's very near. And it's not just we're worshiping a God that's out there, and when we assemble, of course, we give Him due worship, but we need to know that we walk with God on a daily basis. And so you have someone that loses an axe head that is very significant and important. You have, someone who, the stew is like poisonous because somebody made a mistake and gathered some herbs that were poisonous and put them in the stew, and the prophet heals that. So doesn't this tell us about God walking with us? I mean, he's a part of our life daily, is what I get from the whole scheme of things. Would you agree with that?
And to be encouraged whatever task you're undertaking. But to see something, it don't have to be floating in action here, but to see something that you perceive is, this is a good sign. God is with us on
Yeah.
this project. Gives you extra effort, gives you extra strength.
Right.
And they had to talk Elisha into going with them. They had to ask him to go. He wasn't planning on going with them. And I can imagine that young man said, thinking to himself,
I'm sure glad the prophet was here.
This is the sign. Now God is with us. Because, so let's cut down some trees, let's build whatever, let's go for it.
Yeah.
Oh, God's with us. I like that right there.
Yeah.
Amen. But there's a lot of things like this in Judges and 2 Kings. When you take Elijah, when Elisha died. I don't understand this one at all. They I guess left the tomb open, the grave open, because the enemy was coming down the hill, and the people that were throwing the dirt on him jumped into the grave and touched Elijah's bones and
He came
to
up.
life.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy, man.
I know.
Where's that? That just comes from nowhere.
Yeah.
He touched his bones and came to life.
Yeah.
I don't know if they killed him after he came to life or not.
Yeah, I know.
That'd be a fast runner. I
That's
guess.
interesting. God's full of surprises, I guess. One of the things that we would derive from all that. Yes, I was curious as to what y'all would think about the axe head, but that's an event in Elisha's life. Now, here comes one of the other major events, I think, in Elisha. Elijah had the prophets of Baal, right, on Mount Carmel. Elisha's event, I think, is notable. It's here. Because this is one of the pivotal, I think, events in his life. The Syrians, or the Arameans, depending on what translation you have, they don't give up in trying to harass the Israelites. And so they're constantly sending in bands of soldiers and warriors to capture various Israelites, coming down a certain way. It's like almost going from Jerusalem to Jericho. The man that was beaten up, it's sort of like that. They're waiting in hiding and stuff to capture Israelites. And what are they doing? We're bringing them back probably to be slaves to the Syrians. And so this is an event that we're given in the text about this very thing happening. So it's kind of like fleshing it out a little bit more about the Syrians and their actions. So beginning in verse 8. Once when the king of Syria was warring against Israel, he took counsel with his servants, saying, at such and such place shall be my camp. But the man of God sent word to the king of Israel, beware that you do not pass this place, for the Syrians are going down there. And the king of Israel sent to the place about which the man of God told them. Then he used to warn him so that he saved himself there more than once or twice. So see, the Syrians are laying in wait for the king and for others and anybody. And Elisha, God's revealing to Elisha what's happening, and he warns the king, don't go down that place because, the Syrians are out, to harm you. And several times this happens. And so you can imagine what the king of Syria begins to think. There's someone on the inside is leaking information, And so every time they try to, penetrate down into the land of Israel to do these things, it becomes known to the king, and their plan is foiled. They're not successful. So the king gets outraged and upset, and I'll leave it there. Till next time. I'll leave you outraged and upset.